Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the movie What If Naruto Felt the Touch of a Goddess Part 2. If you enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Kaguya didn't feel happy very often in her life. She had so few of them that she could count them all on one hand. But basking in the blood of someone who hurt you as a child, she couldn't explain what she was feeling. The only thing that came close was euphoric. Golden eyes with rings looked up at the darkening clouds as red raindrops hit her in the face. With Urashiki's life essence, her white hair started to get darker, but she didn't care. She had finished. Urashiki had died. Her sister had been avenged. Kaguya bowed her head and closed her eyes to show respect for her sister who had died. As the red raindrops stopped falling, the goddess in her new form moved toward Urashiki's dead body. As the woman looked at his body, her tongue darted past her lips and her eyes flashed with hidden desire. Her tongue went around her lips and licked up the dried blood of a relative who had died. Kneeling next to the body, Kaguya put her hands on Urashiki's torso and tore a piece of flesh off with them. As she ate his flesh, her clawed fingers made quick work of his body. The goddess's face and hands were stained with red liquid as she carefully tore apart and ate Urashiki's decomposing body. As her teeth bit into the tight body, bones snapped and cracked. Red essence dripped from her mouth, fell off her chin, and splashed onto the ground. The goddess hummed with pleasure as she smacked her lips together and easily tore Urashiki's body apart. The more she ate, the louder her hums got, until they turned into soft moans of pleasure. The goddess didn't care about her surroundings as she ate the flesh of another Otsutsuki for the next few minutes. She snapped and chewed with her teeth, easily breaking down bone and cartilage until there was nothing left of Urashiki's body. With a happy hum, Kaguya wiped her face with her arm, spreading the blood all over her face. She licked each of her fingers slowly and carefully, making sure to enjoy the taste of her cousin who had died. That was very upsetting. The voice made Kaguya's head snap back, and her golden eyes flashed toward it. Her chakra flared violently. As she physically willed her power to appear, the earth shook. Behind her, a golden flash came to life and towered over her like an ethereal god. Its shape was hard to figure out, and it appeared and disappeared as if it didn't belong in this world. The trespasser took a half step back and stared at the creature whose eyes were very big. Sasuke's Rinnegan lit up because he was shocked and couldn't understand what he was seeing. Then it seemed to just vanish into thin air as if it had never been there. When Kaguya saw who had spoken, she took control of her chakra, which brought the ethereal being back into her body. Even though she had blood on her face, she spoke calmly, which scared the man who had sneaked up on her. "Enjoy the show," she said in a mocking voice as she slowly stood up. "You are looking quite unwell." Sasuke looked at the woman who was dating his best friend for a moment before shaking his head. "I'll be fine," he said, ignoring the dull throbbing around his Rinnegan. "We took care of the other one." People were interested in her unique Rinnegan. "Oh, tell me more," she said with a small smile on her red-stained face. "Did they have pain?" Kaguya was different. She was changed by whatever happened to her. Sasuke couldn't even sense her chakra. It was like she didn't have any, which didn't make sense since she had lit it up when he spoke, calling thing. That doesn't even take into account the fact that she had eaten the dead bodies of the Otsutsuki she had fought. Is that where Otsutsuki's power really came from? Sasuke didn't want to think about the problem any longer. His name was Ishiki. He stopped for a moment as the woman's golden Rinnegan flared with power. "I'm guessing you knew him." The goddess, who had been changed, laughed to herself as she looked in different directions. No, not just going anywhere. She was looking in the direction that Naruto was. Yes, she took a while to say the word. "My poor uncle," she said after a short pause. Then she turned her head to the side. "Is his body in one piece?" Before answering, Sasuke frowned for a moment. "Yes, beautiful." When Sasuke blinked, the woman was gone right in front of his eyes. When he saw how fast she was going, his eyes grew big. He ran after her quickly. The Uchiha couldn't get rid of the feeling that something bad was about to happen. He might have been worrying about nothing, but something told him that this change would cause trouble. Naruto huffed quietly as he looked at the dead Otsutsuki that he and Sasuke had killed. Sweat ran down his face as he looked at the body. As he wiped the copper taste off the bottom of his lip, he let out a quiet sigh. What a terrible fight. The Otsutsuki had the power to make anything smaller and then quickly make it bigger again. At first glance, the man's skill seemed pretty simple, but he used it to his advantage with deadly accuracy. His blue eyes wandered to his stomach, where they saw a wound that had already healed. During their fight, he felt a small poke in his stomach. As soon as he closed his eyes, a large chakra rod like his Gudadama pierced through his stomach, causing it to burst open. This power had caught him off guard more than once, and it almost cost Sasuke his Rinnegan. The only reason Sasuke didn't lose his eye was because he used the Hiraishin. Another annoying thing about the fight was that Ishiki could react to the Hiraishin. Naruto did not have a lot of pride. He knew he was very powerful, but the fact that someone with power they hadn't worked for could match him and even beat him in some ways made him feel bad. Out there, Naruto, there is always someone stronger. As Naruto looked at the dead Otsutsuki, he curled his lip in anger. I know Kurama, but that doesn't make it any less annoying. I worked hard to get this power. Your problems don't matter to anyone else, partner. Naruto agreed with what his Biju said. Still didn't change that it made him angry. He knew she was there before she showed up. His blue eyes flashed to the left and he saw. Naruto looked at his wife, who had just changed, with wide eyes. His eyes went all over her body, noticing all the changes. He slowly opened his mouth and then slowly closed it again, admiring her new look. He wrinkled his brows as the pale-skinned woman smirked at him. You look different, which is a good thing. The woman looked at the dead body of her husband, which was just a few feet away from where her husband was lying. Did he have to go through pain? Kaguya asked with a smile as she slowly moved toward her blonde lover. She moved her hips in an exaggerated way, and she liked how her husband looked at her. Naruto looked at the dead Otsutsuki for a moment before shrugging his shoulders and leaning his head against the rock he was sitting in front of. I hope so, he said, looking back at her and noticing how much blood was on her body. Are you hurt? As she stopped a foot from her lover, the woman smiled with her whole mouth. It's not my property. Naruto noticed that his wife was acting differently, but he thought it was because of the strange change she had gone through. Naruto, unlike Sasuke, knew that the Otsutsuki could change into many different things when they ate each other or Shinju. He felt something heavy land on his lap, and when he opened his eyes, he saw his wife sitting on his hips. He looked at her strange Rinnegan with a raised eyebrow and a sense of wonder. Do you need something? She put her fingers, which looked like claws, on Naruto's shoulders with a naughty grin on her face. I need you, the woman said as she brushed her bloody lips against his. Why don't you get rid of these clothes? Naruto's hands wrapped around the woman's waist and stopped her from rolling her hips. Where did my shy wife go? Just last week, you were blushing at the thought of doing something in public, he said with a sly grin as his wife made noises of disapproval. Don't test my patience, sweetheart, said Kaguya as she pushed Naruto's hands off of her with a force that surprised him. Her long hair slowly uncurled and moved on its own until it wrapped around Naruto's wrists, trapping him the same way he had trapped her. Kinky, Naruto said with a big smile, trying and failing to get away from his wife's grip. What are you going to do to me? As Kaguya leaned over her husband and rubbed her pelvis against his, her tongue snaked through her lips and down his cheek. Anything I want. Your breath smells like blood, Naruto said quietly, not caring that his wife was giving him pleasure. Stop whining, my love, she said as she touched his chest with her claws and brushed her lips against his. A little blood can't hurt, right? She asked, biting into his skin and drawing a small amount of blood to emphasize her point. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki flexed his muscles and tried to break out of his bonds, but he couldn't. When his wife got stronger, it made him raise his eyebrows. Wow, you're a lot stronger now, he said. When she moved her hips slowly, he let out a low groan. Kaguya made a low purring sound and nibbled at the man's neck. How does it feel, my love, to be the weak one now? She ran one of her hands down his chest, over his stomach, and down to his waist. The woman's claw-like fingers danced on the hem of his pants while her blue eyes looked down. Strangely satisfying, he said with a sly smile as his wife put her hand down his pants. He let out a low grunt as she slowly stroked him, humming with pleasure as she licked and nibbled at his neck. You two have no shame, Sasuke said to let them know he was there. Kaguya let out an angry growl and flicked her hand in Sasuke's direction. This made a portal appear under him and forced him to go through it. Annoying pest. Naruto laughed out loud at what his wife did, and as she continued to stroke him, he let out a quiet hiss of pleasure. Come now, beloved, she said with a husky voice as her golden eyes looked down at him. Let's make love, she whispered, lowering her head and brushing her lips against his earlobe. Give me your seed. I want to give birth to your child. Naruto doesn't need to be persuaded anymore. The blue eyes looked bored as they looked down at the stack of folders and papers. All of the papers were filled with nonsense and words that were too hard to understand. Why use such silly words to talk about things that are so simple? Who wrote this anyway? He worked as a shinobi, not a thesaurus, damn it. There was no rule about how long words had to be. Naruto was sure that it was Sasuke who did it. These days, that annoying jerk would do almost anything to give someone a headache. The one-eyed fuck didn't look good at 40, which wasn't his fault. He was lucky enough to have the genes of the Uzumaki. He wouldn't look a day over 35 even if he was 60 years old. When that time came, he couldn't wait to rub it in his old friend's face. "You're not doing your work," someone said to him in a sluggish drawl. "Stop being lazy." Naruto didn't attack the man with a futon jutsu when he smelled the strong smell of cigarettes coming from him. "Shika," Naruto said, his eyes moving over the paper in front of him but not really reading it. "Put that cigarette out or I'll throw you out the window," he said. He'd also do it. He had done things like that before. Temari liked what he did, so he had even more reason to keep doing it. The Nara muttered under his breath, but in the end, he did what his leader asked. The jerk had already thrown him through the window a few times, and Shikamaru wasn't sure he wanted to be sent halfway across the village today. Maybe some other time. Not today, though. "If you did your work, I wouldn't feel the need to smoke," Shikamaru said as he leaned against the office window and rolled his eyes. "We've been here for 3 hours longer than we should have. What are you doing?" When Naruto heard what his old friend said, he blinked and raised his eyebrows in confusion. What do you mean?" He turned his head towards Shikamaru, his eyes widening when he saw how dark it was outside. "Oh shit." Shikamaru smiled and raised an eyebrow. "Kaguya's going to kill you." Naruto sped through the paperwork so quickly that Shikamaru was already used to how fast he worked. Documents, folders, papers, approval stamps, they were filled out quickly, correctly. The Nara shook his head and smiled wryly as he watched Naruto start to clean up his office so he could go home. "You know, if you took your work seriously, you wouldn't be put in this position over and over again." Naruto grunted in frustration as he grabbed different papers and put them in different cabinet drawers. "Let me off the hook, Shika. I've saved the world at least 6 times now." The Nara said with a small smile. "Heroes don't get a day off." Naruto warned with a roll of the eyes, "Don't call me that. I'm no longer 17, so I've passed my best years." Shikamaru rolled his eyes and pulled a pack of cigarettes out of his jacket. He put one of the cigarettes in his mouth, but he didn't light it. "Keep telling yourself that, even though you and I both know it's not true." The Hokage finally finished his work and put all the papers where they needed to be before answering his trusted advisor. "Oh, I know. I'm just trying to be modest." "Yes, humble is a word," Shikamaru said quickly. "That's not how I would usually describe you, but that's just my opinion." The blonde shinobi asked quickly, "Guy who's about to be thrown through the window, what are you saying?" "What?" Shikamaru asked without thinking. It only took a second for the question to be understood. "Oh, phew," Naruto yelled, "see you tomorrow, Shika," and waved in the direction he had thrown Shikamaru. His eyes wandered over the broken window in his office until he finally gave a shrug. "Tomorrow, I'll fix it." The Hokage then left the office in a golden flash, never to be seen again. Naruto came back to his house and stood in front of the door. He took a deep breath to calm himself down before putting his palm on the thing. He pulsed his chakra, which opened the door, and he walked through. As soon as he walked into the house, he smelled something delicious, which made his eyebrows furrow. That was strange. He arrived late. When it came to her home, Kaguya was very careful. She always cooked dinner at the same time every day. He was surprised that he could smell what seemed to be fresh food. He stretched his senses out into the house, locking onto 2 signatures within his home. Slowly and quietly, he made his way to the kitchen, and a small smile grew on his face. As he got closer to the kitchen, he heard 2 voices, both of which had a female tone to them. Peeking his head into the room, Naruto's smile softened at the scene. His beautiful wife, whose appearance had not changed back, was on her knees talking softly to a young child. "Satsu-chan, be careful with the instrument you play," Kaguya said softly with a smile. "It's not the weapon that's dangerous," she said, pointing to the pale girl and putting her fingertip on her chest. "It is the one who wields it that is dangerous." The girl with pale skin, whose name was Satsu, nodded. "I understand, Mama." As Naruto looked at Satsushiki, his eyes became more soft. Kaguya chose her name and almost insisted that she be called after her younger sister, who had died a long time ago. Naruto hadn't bothered putting up a fight with the woman. How could he? He was happy as long as his wife was happy. Little Satsushiki was practically a carbon copy of Kaguya before her original consumption of the Shinju. She didn't look much like him, except for the whisker marks on her cheeks and the way her eyes were turned. The girl's long hair was the same snowy white color as his wife's. Her hair fell down her back and was so long that it almost touched the floor. She had tiny bangs that fell under her chin, just like his own father had. Atop her head was a tiny pair of horns that lacked a distinctive trait to them. Satsushiki wore a ceremony robe that looked a lot like the one Kaguya wore before she changed into her new form. The only difference was the choice of color that she had chosen for it. The best part, it was a burnt orange color, similar to the colors he had worn when he was 16 years old. Kaguya had a lot of fits about the color their daughter chose, but Naruto was very proud. Satsushiki may be the spitting image of his wife, but she took after him when it came to her personality. She was neither a very calm nor a very patient child. She wasn't as loud as he was, but she was still rude and quick to act. "Mama?" Satsushiki questioned quietly, placing her foot against the wall and climbing up it with ease to reach the counter. "When does Dad get home?" Kaguya glanced at her child, making sure that the girl had successfully made it to the counter before replying. "Your father is a very busy man, Satsu-chan." Their daughter was too young to catch it, but Naruto could tell from her tone that she was upset and angry. He grimaced at his wife's words, sighing quietly to himself. Satsushiki frowned at her mother's words, falling to her knees and scraping the knife in her hands on the cutting board that Kaguya was using. "Papa is always busy. Why is he never home? He must hate us." The things his daughter said hurt him deeply and made his face twist in pain. Kaguya immediately reprimanded her daughter. "Don't say bad things about your father, Satsushiki," she told the girl sternly, staring into her snowy eyes. She dropped the knife in her hand, firmly gripping her daughter's chin to make sure the girl was listening. "Your father would sacrifice the very world itself if it meant that you were safe and sound. Do not sully his name where he can hear you." Kaguya's eyes went straight to Naruto for a moment, where she saw his twisted face. She pursed her lips for a moment before returning her gaze to their daughter. "Satsushiki, Naruto loves you more than life itself." Tears coalesced in the little girl's eyes as she sniffled. When she spoke, her voice was low and soft. "Sometimes it doesn't feel like it." When the girl spoke, Kaguya's eyes got warmer. She released her hold upon the girl's chin, gingerly stroking her daughter's cheeks. "Then why don't you say anything? He can't read your mind, daughter, and your dad would do anything to make you happy." Satsushiki sniffed once, and her small hands came up to wipe her face. "I don't want to bother him," she whispered as she looked down at the cutting board. "Everyone says that Papa is busy, and the other kids make fun of me for it. That's not fair. Why does Papa have to be the Hokage? Let someone else be in charge." As she stroked her daughter's cheeks, Kaguya let out a quiet sigh. "Daughter, it's not that easy." Little Satsu's hands were balled up in anger. Her chakra grew dangerously strong and shook the house to its core. Golden specks of chakra wafted off her body as she responded. "That's what everyone says. Who cares about that stupid hat? I just want my papa. It isn't fair that everyone else gets to spend time with their papas but won't let me spend time with mine. I hate it." Tears of frustration and anger fell from his daughter's face, splashing against the countertop. "Why does the village come first, Mama?" Kaguya's face showed a sad smile as she let Satsushiki vent her anger and frustration. "When he was your age, your father's dream was to be the leader of this village. I can't understand why your father does what he does. It's not my place, Satsushiki, and it's not yours either. We have to accept these things." Satsushiki sniffled once more as she replied quietly. "I don't like it." Kaguya shook her head and let out a soft sigh as she pulled the girl close to her chest. She didn't care about the small horns on the girl's head. "It is fine to dislike it. I cannot control the emotions you possess, but you must accept it. Your father is a gentle man. He is not like us. You cannot condemn him for the same things your peers condemn you for." The rabbit goddess paused for a moment, stroking her daughter's hair. "Let this be a lesson to you, the first of many. There will be times in life that are trying, arduous and painful, but you must never give in to them. You must continue forward, never stopping whilst maintaining strength. It is only when you have stood in the pits of despair that you can witness the beauty of the sun, my dear daughter." Little Satsushiki wiped the tears from her face with a quiet sniffle. "I understand, Mama." Kaguya smiled as she touched the top of her daughter's head again. She turned her gaze back towards Naruto, frowning upon noticing his absence. She gave a tired sigh as she turned her attention back to her daughter. She stuffed her feelings back into her chest and calmed down before she spoke. "Come on, Satsu-chan, let's finish getting ready. Your dad will be home soon from work." Even though the girl's eyes were red, she perked up when her father was mentioned. "Hi, Mama." The goddess pulled away from the girl, and her eyes went back to where Naruto had been. She stared at the area for a moment before shaking her head with a sad sigh. Kaguya hoped that Naruto would also learn something from this. She didn't think that the man was wrong about how he felt about Konoha and the elemental nations. Naruto was his own man who truly owed her no obligations. Yes, they were husband and wife, but she knew Naruto. His first love would always be to the village he grew up in, the same town that had been mean to him since birth. But Naruto would, one day, have to choose between his family and the village. He gave birth to a real daughter. He was now responsible for something that he had to do. Satsushiki deserved his love as much as, if not more than, this village. Kaguya didn't want his ambitions and dreams to be more important than the child he had made. It was quiet at dinner. Naruto walked in with a tight smile on his face and looked at her with love in his eyes. When he saw his daughter for the first time, his face changed. Not out of anger or dislike, but out of sadness and regret. Kaguya could easily figure out how he felt. Naruto had always let everyone know how he felt. He was an open book that could not be closed. As young as she was, their daughter didn't notice the look. She was just happy that her dad was there. Naruto usually spoke enough for the both of them, but tonight, it was peaceful. Satsushiki hadn't really noticed because she was a child who didn't pay attention to much. After dinner, Kaguya took their daughter aside and took her to the bathroom so she could clean up and get ready for bed. The little girl had been upset because she wanted to spend more time with her dad. The goddess took one look at Naruto, whose eyes stared down at his half-finished dinner with disgust and frustration. She shook her head and then made Satsushiki leave the room by telling her that Naruto would put her to sleep. It took less than an hour to get Satsushiki ready for bed. Naruto snuck into her room and told her a short story about his past before giving her a soft kiss and sending her to bed. Her eyes lit up with joy and happiness. Kaguya's eyes remained closed as she sensed Naruto bounding his way down the stairs. She carefully scrubbed the dinner plates with her hands until they were clean. Slowly, her husband made his way toward her. He stood next to her and helped her clean the dirty dishes without saying a word. No words were spoken for the first few minutes, just the idle noise of the faucet running and water splashing. Kaguya looked at her husband from the side and noticed how far away he looked. She let out a quiet sigh before turning off the water and talking. "She loves you, you know that, right?" The blonde man looked at his wife and blinked when he heard the question. He was leaning against the counter. Yeah, I know." Kaguya wiped her hands dry with a spare towel, crossing her arms against her breasts. "Then what's the point? I won't let you pout in front of me." Naruto let out a quiet sigh and clapped his hands together. Her words hurt. She has the right to her feelings, no matter how small or unimportant they seem. It makes me realize how people see me." When he spoke, a fine eyebrow rose. "Wife, please explain. I can weather anything thrown at me," he explained slowly, staring down at his hands. "Poisonous words from strangers and vicious hatred from old friends and comrades about my decision to marry you wouldn't bother me. I didn't care what they had to say about my decisions about you, the elemental nations, or anything else that had to do with keeping peace among the Big Five." He stopped for a second and just stared into the sink. But to hear my own daughter's words on how she feels about me, he shook his head with a ragged sigh. I couldn't just ignore them. They hurt, and the fact that they were true made them hurt even more. Kaguya saddled up beside her husband, molding her body against his and speaking. "Satsushiki is but a child, husband. Her words hold no true rancor to them. She has yet to mature and grow." When his wife spoke, Naruto shook his head. "Satsushiki isn't a pure-blood Otsutsuki, You can't treat her like one. She has the same emotions that all humans possess. They will always be there, ingrained into her very core." A low sigh escaped his lips as he continued. "Raising her like an Otsutsuki will only hurt her mind. She is a child, but she is not like you, You can't force her to grow up with just words. She needs to form her own opinions and beliefs and be able to say what she wants and doesn't want without fear of being punished." Kaguya's eyes narrowed at the man's words whilst her right hand snaked through his arms. She stroked his hands, leaning her head atop his shoulders. "Someone has to reprimand her actions, and we both know it won't be you, beloved. You cannot hope to punish her. You are much too soft on her, husband." Naruto allowed a small smile to paint his face at her words. "I don't want her to grow up resenting me just because she feels a certain way about something. I never had a father, or a parent for that matter, to guide me growing up. I don't really understand what's right and wrong and what not to do." He sighed quietly as he squeezed his wife's hand. Kaguya pursed her lips for a moment before deciding to be as blunt as possible. "What you are doing wrong, husband, is putting the village before your daughter." Her golden eyes hardened as the man turned his head towards her. "You are a gentle man, kind to a fault. You love deeply, husband. That love spreads even to those you don't personally know. But you truly owe these people nothing. However, you have an obligation to Satsushiki. I will never come between your dream and ambition. It is not my place to do so, but you will not shoulder our child to accomplish these goals. I would sooner take our daughter and leave this planet." Her golden eyes flashed as she stared into Naruto's eyes. "You owe me nothing, Naruto. But Satsushiki, she deserves everything." The woman's lips grazed his cheek, offering a chaste kiss before pulling away swiftly. "One day, my dear, you will have to make a choice. All I can do is pray that you make the right one, because I won't stand for the same things your father did to you." With that, the woman strutted out of the kitchen, leaving Naruto alone with his thoughts. He slowly moved his eyes to the moon and stared at the big mass of Earth. The man shook his head quietly before disappearing in a golden flash. "Okay, class, calm down," a shinobi in a mask told the class in front of him. "Today's lesson is going to be about how important." Satsushiki zoned her teacher's words out after that. She didn't need these lessons, but she had to take them if she wanted to graduate from the Shinobi Academy. She was the youngest individual in this particular classroom, having skipped several grades. Father had at first protested but soon acquiesced when Mother explained that she was far too advanced and skilled to remain with those younger and less experienced. The 6-year-old leaned her head against her palm, pale orb staring out the window of the classroom. She was already a chunin, if not right on the edge of becoming a jonin. She didn't have anything else but a lack of experience and maturity. Papa had told her that jonins, no matter how old they were usually emotionally mature. He told her that she was kind of not enough in that particular material, which was probably right. She was only 6 years old, after all. She knew that many shinobi have finished their training at a young age. Those ones were typically drafted into the ANBU organization and were usually never seen again. Satsushiki highly doubted that father would allow such a thing to happen. Mother had always said that she would stand out too much for something like the ANBU. She didn't quite understand what Mother had been alluding to, but as she grew older and listened to the words spoken around her, she had begun to slowly piece together the puzzle. The older generation thought they were slick with their words, but Satsushiki was different from the rest of the children her age. She knew when she was young that she wasn't like other people. After all, no other child looked as she did. The only individual that even slightly resembled her was Mother, and everyone in the village said a lot about her, mostly negative with the various odd compliment. Those were rare, but they did occasionally happen. She heard from other people that her mother wasn't from this world, that she was a heralder of death and despair, some kind of omen that only wanted to bring about famine and destruction. She didn't understand their words at first, and she didn't know why they thought so badly of her mother. She had asked Auntie Ino about it, but the woman had said, "It's not my place to say," and stayed quiet. Satsushiki had always been a curious child, to a detrimental degree even. Because of that, people would say hurtful things to her and hate her. It was the first time she had ever felt angry. Those same people who said bad things about her mother had to deal with her anger, which only made things worse for her and her mother on a daily basis. Because of something her mother did, these people didn't like her. Satsushiki didn't like it. She just couldn't take it. Why should she suffer for the actions of her mother? Regardless of whatever atrocities her mother had done, she herself did not deserve to be treated so harshly. Father had told her that emotions are what make people who they are. If pushed hard enough, they would act on them, follow them, and even betray them. She didn't really understand what he was saying until she faced the same kind of prejudice that he had. Unlike her own father, who would push back against these people and decide to make them respect him, Satsushiki would resent them. Why should she care about the people who disliked her? The only individuals she wished to please were those she considered family, like Shikadai and Sarada-chan. They never told her what to do, and they even respected her. They didn't treat her like some useless child or a pest. It was too bad that they had already become jonin. She was stuck here, in this dumb, boring classroom with people she didn't really know or care about. She wanted to work with Sarada on missions and beat up bad guys. This school life was horrendously boring. Satsushiki-san, the horned child, was brought out of her thoughts as the teacher spoke her name. She looked at the teacher and raised a delicate eyebrow at his face covered with a mask. "Can you tell me why you weren't paying attention?" he asked politely, pocketing one of his hands and leaning against the chalkboard. The demi-Otsutsuki blinked in response to the question, then looked out the window again. "Sensei, this class is boring." The girl's words made the teacher with silver hair laugh quietly. "I know, little one, but everyone has to pass this class, no matter how talented they are. You can't graduate without paying attention and passing. Your father made it so." The way this man talked about her father with ease and familiarity made her stop and think. She looked back at the man and stared at the scar that went from his eye to his face. "You talk so casually about father. Did you know him?" "Short stack, he's a shinobi." "Of course he knows the Hokage," said a random kid. Satsushiki's eyes flew to the child and his lip curled in irritation. She laughed in a condescending way, like she was Otsutsuki. "I didn't realize I was talking to you, Iwabani. The last time I checked, I was talking to the teacher of the class. Know when to be quiet, pest. Your betters are talking right now." The boy was so mad that he almost screamed at the girl, but the teacher stopped him with just one look. "Mama, kids, save your fighting for the playground," said the retired ninja as he looked at the Hokage's child and gave a small smile. "Did I know your father, you ask?" The girl with horns nodded, and the man with silver hair laughed quietly. I didn't just know your father, I taught him how to do things. When the man said that, Satsushiki's small eyebrows went up, and then her eyes got bigger. Your Hokage Kakashi. The older man just bowed and raised his hands like he was saying I guess so. Was it the hair color, the scar, or the mask? The daughter of the Hokage narrowed her eyes as her classmates whispered to themselves, not sure what was going on. All of them are idiots. They were sitting near greatness and didn't even know it. They were learning from Hokage Kakashi. Mother says good things about you, Rokidame-sama, Satsushiki says politely, bowing her head to show respect to the man who had earned the respect of even mother. The kids let out a few gasps of surprise when they heard what the village leaders were called. There were a lot of exclamations in the classroom, which made Kakashi roll his eyes. After letting the kids be loud for a minute or so, Kakashi raised his hand to quiet everyone down. As he talked, his dark eyes looked at Satsushiki. I'm flattered that the famous Kaguya thinks so much of me. As she went on, the girl with pale skin nodded her head. She says that without you, that father would have been a bumbling idiot grasping at straws to breathe through muddy water. When the girl spoke, Kakashi laughed a little. That sounds like something she would say for sure. Before the demi-Otsutsuki could answer, a voice she knew rang out in the room. Now, that's just rude. Speaking behind my back, Kakai-sensei. When Satsushiki heard her father's voice, her eyes got big. She turned her head around and saw the man right behind her smiling cheekily. The kids jumped for joy for the Hokage and talked about how amazing and cool it was that there were two Hokages in the same room. After a few minutes of chaos, which Kakashi and Naruto didn't try to stop, the masked man finally spoke to his former student. Naruto, you should be afraid of people talking about you. Naruto rolled his eyes and laughed to himself in a playful way. Oh, sure, he said, ignoring his sensei's laugh, and then he looked down at his daughter. Hi, Satsu-chan. How are you? Satsushiki was quiet for a few seconds before she broke into a big grin. Papa, she almost jumped into his arms, spearing into him and making him back up. The girl's blonde father laughed heartily as he held her up and answered her loud greeting. Come on, Satsu-chan, he teased in a playful way. I have to keep up my reputation, so I can't be seen being hugged to death. The little girl violently shook her head, not caring how she looked or acted. Don't care. When Naruto's daughter spoke, his eyes got softer. He moved the girl without saying anything, pulling her closer and stroking her back gently. When he looked at Kakashi, his eyes grew narrow for a moment. Both men nodded their heads as they talked in silence. Come on, Satsu-chan. I'm not working today. Really, she said in a loud voice. The sheer happiness and excitement in her eyes only made Naruto feel worse about what he had done. How could he not see this before? Of course, my little snuggle bug, he joked, giggling at the embarrassed look on her face. Father, she whispered, her face wriggling against his chest because the name was so embarrassing. Awa, it's okay if you don't like your nickname anymore. You'll always be Papa's little snuggle bug. Father, she was so embarrassed by the nickname that she almost screamed. Naruto laughed out loud at how embarrassed his daughter was, and then, with the girl still attached to his chest, he vanished in a golden flash. He spent the whole day with his daughter, but his mind kept going back to what his wife had said. Seeing the pure joy in her eyes as they did everyday things around the village really put what he had been doing into perspective. Satsushiki, she was his whole world now. He was her father. She was a part of him that had its own life and thoughts. The love and joy that came with knowing that a piece of you would always be in this world, he just couldn't explain it. Kaguya had been right. He would destroy this world just to keep her safe. He would move mountains, bring down whole armies and villages, and kill everyone who even thought about hurting her. When his wife told him that one day he'd have to choose between Satsushiki and the village, he didn't think that coming to a decision would happen so quickly. He had always wanted to be Hokage. It was his life's goal. Then it grew to include making his old sensei's dream come true, to stop the fighting in the elemental nations. He had reached both of these goals and worked hard to keep them. But as he looked at this little girl, whose hair was as white as snow and whose eyes were full of happiness and excitement, he would always choose her over the elemental nations. I will always love you, Satsushiki.
So this was the end of this movie. I hope you enjoyed it. If you wanna watch more movies like this, subscribe to my channel. Till then, we weeb offline.